Well, hey there, fellas. It's been quite some time, but finally have a new computer and can finally start making some videos again. I've been sitting on this idea for a while, but I've wanted to do it, and now I finally can. I want to start a new series called Repairin that class, where we just repair classes, we fix everything with them, and hopefully have a good time and get some things done. As you can guess from the video's title, today we're going to repair Engineer. So, when you look at Engineer, you don't really see an unbalanced class. I mean, for the most part, it's a pretty quiet and relaxed class. But, I'm sure you're very aware, certain weapons just have absolutely zero use when it comes to our resident Texan, and that to me is just unacceptable. Rather than being like a lot of players who just complain about the imbalance, I'm going to actually suggest some changes and ideas that hopefully can help balance these weapons out and address the issue of turtling. I've come in at a good time, it seems, with this video, as, if any time, I think Valve's going to be listening right now. Matchmaking's coming up, and they clearly want to balance the game a little better than it is right now. So, let's get right to it. We're going to start off with the Rescue Ranger. So, when you look at the Rescue Ranger, you don't really see a broken weapon. It's a very common weapon. It's probably one of the most popular weapons, if not the most popular weapon for engineers today. It really has done wonders to making engineering defensively a lot more enjoyable and even exciting. But it pairs almost too well with the themes of turtling. You almost get rewarded for just sitting next to your buildings and spamming shots with the Rescue Ranger. And that's not really great. When I look at the Ranger, I really only see one change that has to be made that will really change playstyles of Engineers game-wide. My only change to the Ranger? Upon hitting a player with the Rescue Ranger's bolt, you'll receive 50 metal. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I play Engineer a little weirder than most people do. I'm very offensive, I'm very aggressive towards enemy players. But this change really nips turtling in the bud because you can just go get the metal you need instead of waiting for an ammo pack. You might argue this change is useless on a weapon that's focused solely on being a utility to the engineer, but allow me to explain a little bit. I believe most, if not all, weapons should give you a new playstyle to use, if only it slightly differs from how you would normally play. Whether you make an entirely new playstyle or just enhance an element of that class to be the focus of playstyle entirely. With this change, you're given a more offensive choice if you wish to get buildings built quickly without a dispenser on hand. Any competitive engineer main will tell you how big of a change this is. This change can actually pair very well with the Gunslinger. You only need 100 metal to make a new little demon of a machine, and that's only going to take you 2 well-aimed shots to have another mini on hand. In any comp setting where gunslingers are being used, if your mini isn't taking damage often, it's not being used correctly. It gives NG an interesting choice between the reliability of straight aim and a shotgun, or the now deepened utility of the Ranger and its small but mighty mini-sentry. Of course, we have to balance this, so I would most likely recommend nerfing the firing speed of the Ranger just slightly. Something that I feel should already have been done with the Ranger regardless, but definitely with this change. The Pompton. Oh my, the Pompton. Alright, where do we even start with this one? The Pompton's just an absolute mess of a weapon. It's not really good enough to consider in any competitive settings, but it's just bad enough to jokingly use on a pub. It's become a joke of a weapon at best, and it's in need of some serious fixing. So, here's my changes. The Pompton now has the ability to remove enemy sappers on friendly buildings with 2 Pompton shots. This change does scale with damage done on sappers, so less than 2 shots might be all you need to remove that sapper from that building. This change is fairly similar to what the Ranger does with its range, but you can use the Pompton to remove enemy sappers from any distance. It's just going to cost you 2 shots from your clip, and that's it. As it is, the Pompton isn't really a reliable weapon in combat, or anything for that matter. And it definitely has use with the draining of Uber and Cloak, but does that really warrant enough to be usable anywhere outside of a pub? To balance this change, the sentries unsapped by the Pompton fire will be disabled for an extra second after the sapper is removed. Makes sense. This makes it so the Pompton in the worst of situations is something that'll buy you some time. If a spy is spamming sappers on your sentry, we'll get to that in another video, then you can use the Pompton to save it long enough to run to save it fully. Otherwise, this change makes it so engineers don't have to turtle with their buildings anymore. And hell, maybe they can even go out and put that Uber and Cloak draining ability to use. The Jag. I've heard quite a few people, including a few YouTubers, that say Engineer's biggest turning off point to people is how slow it tends to be in playstyle. While this can really vary with playstyle, it's very true that elements of Engi's playstyle are just slow and tedious, such as upgrading and hauling buildings. The second of which is what brings the Ranger to such prominence, so let's go ahead and add something to the Jag. Hauling with the Jag is now 10 to 15% faster. Now, numbers in these videos, they're always subject to change, but 10 to 15 seems like it would just be enough to really make a difference and make it worthwhile to start hauling buildings. This change is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it helps simmer down the prominence of the Ranger over every other primary for the Engineer. This, along with the Pompton, can make quite the interesting loadout if you really think about it. The two changed weapons can allow for much more inventive sentry placements, as sappers are really not a problem for you. Although, damage will be. I've always considered the Jag to be kind of a panic weapon. Last point on Badwater, you need a sentry up fast kind of weapon. This only really helps that and really allows for NGs to move gear up further and a lot faster. Hell, we might even see a few more NGs in level 3s on the front lines of battle. Southern Hospitality. The weapon that a lot of people argue for, but they never really seem to convince people on using it. A weapon that has good use, but it's really overshadowed by the stock wrench. So let's make it stand out from the crowd, shall we? Southern Hospitality now removes sappers in one hit. This makes the SH stand out from the pack, as it should, and it gives you yet another choice to be made. There isn't much choice right now in NG's wrench arsenal, but with some variation, you can easily change this. To balance this, I've added 10% more damage taken from all sources, and a 5 to 10% slower swing speed. I've chosen to remove the 20% fire damage taken from the wrench because I don't really like giving specific damage types advantages over players. Instead, add the 10% damage from all sources, kinda makes the NG a bit of a glass cannon. You can keep that gun up, but spam is really gonna start to hurt. And dispensers are going to become very important. You'll notice that this is actually very friendly to turtling engineers, and that's for a reason. I think that turtling isn't a bad idea, but it's a bad habit. So if we can make it a play style and give it its own wrench to play with, maybe it'll be a little more fun and a little more rewarding. And of course, numbers are subject to change. We don't want any 50% slower swing speed, because that's just for the Eureka effect. Speaking of which, the Eureka effect. Alright, so the Pompton's a mess, but you can still kind of use it. The Eureka effect, not so much. You really just put that one in the closet, you lock the door, and you tell people just not to go over there. But I think I can fix that. So I'm going to remove all the negative attributes from this weapon. We're just going to keep it to what it has with the teleporting and go from there. Pressing the reload key will allow for you to teleport, as well as the option to teleport sentries and dispensers to the user's position in however long the taunt takes to finish, at the cost of 100 metal. Furthermore, if the user has 200 metal on deck, the sentry or dispenser will teleport instantly for all 200 metal. Building deploy time will now be 10% slower, upgrade animations are now slightly Valve, slower. The weapon concept is really something that's special, and it has the potential to be an amazing item. But Valve has to make it that way. I would like to believe my changes, although maybe a tad confusing at first, really make the weapon interesting to play with and do some crazy save plays when you just respawn and your gun is about to be dead. As added protection, I want to add that you cannot teleport buildings to you while you're in any spawn, just to stop any bugs or exploits from coming up. So hey, there we go. That's my changes to the Engineer, and hopefully they'll make the class a little more fun, a little more enjoyable, and hopefully you guys will agree or give some better ideas. I want to keep this series going. I want to balance everything that is in the game currently, because I feel like there's a lot of unbalance still within the game, and with matchmaking coming up, that's a really upsetting thing to think about, but I'm going to do my best, and hopefully we're going to have a good time with these. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.